Are you in the DC area? Am I right
am.
about that?
I'm right across the line in Maryland. I'm
Okay.
16 miles from the White House.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I'm in DC proper, which I didn't realize we were so
You
close.
told me you were in Chicago.
Yeah. Well,
Oh my
I
God.
used to be, but yeah, I've been
Oh,
in
okay.
DC. Yeah, I know. I felt bad when I realized. I was like, oh, I should have invited you over.
I am in Silver Spring.
Okay. Yeah.
where I am.
I'm in Northeast DC. I'm pretty close to Union Station.
Oh, okay, cool. I used to
Yeah.
live over there up on Maryland Avenue back in the
Oh,
day.
okay. Yeah, that's very close to where I am. Yeah, I've lived in DC 2 different times. The first time I was really close to like RFK Stadium, right off of Maryland. So yeah, Northeast is
Okay.
definitely my area. But
All right.
yeah, I
Rare to
don't know.
meet. It's rare to meet somebody who lives in DC that's actually like a DJ and
I know, right? Yeah, it's the dance music scene here. It's interesting. I don't know your experience or your perspective on it, because for me, it's like it feels a little small, but all the people here are so talented, and it really does feel like a vibrant scene, even if it doesn't necessarily get the national shine.
I mean, I haven't been downtown hanging out in a long time, but I do know there's still a scene, and I know because I know Ultra and the Tape that still does a party, I think on 14th Street that I've seen. So I'm glad to see it because I hear there's even bigger clubs, but I haven't heard about too many. I haven't met too many producers anymore down in DC that does dance music. So it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like DC suffers from some of the same problems that like a city like, say, San Diego or some others, where you're close to a major city. Like we're pretty close to New York. And so I feel like everybody kind of comes up wherever you're born, but then a lot of people move to the bigger places, you know?
Yeah. But the one thing I always liked about DC, it was international. So you had the Europeans coming up who really knew dance music and stuff like that. And you would see that now and then pop up. And so, it's like, an educated crowd. These are people who have been around the world. And so they know all the music, from around the world. So it's kind of nice to kind of mingle with those crowds when you do go out.
Yeah, that's true. And you used to live in DC. Like, how old were you when you were living here when you were younger?
I came at 16. I went to Howard University. So
Right.
I just stayed. After I had my kids, I just kind of moved further and further out.
Right.
As you get a little older. So, yeah, I've been here, in the 80s, early 80s. And I've been in Silver Spring, I don't know, since 94. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what was it like, to vaguely focus this interview on like your story in music? Were you active in music when you first came to Howard? Or even if not, were you going out and seeing music? Like, what kind of music was around you at that time? Because that's such a formative time in anyone's life.
I think at that time I was going to Howard, but I was spending a lot of time in the club. Probably a little too much. So I used to go down to the clubs and make friends with the DJs, and they used to get me in. I was underage. But the music then was kind of, house was kind of starting, but it was kind of, it was still kind of like the confunction bands, kind of a little more funky, danceable but funky. And I always just remember they would play, we didn't even call it house music back then. It was just dance music. They would play it late night on the radio. So, coming home from the club, I would hear it like, what is this? What is this kind of, what is this music? And that's really where I first started hearing house music. And I didn't start singing until I had got my first job at the D.C. government, working for the parole board for the Marion Barry, the good Marion Barry. And I just remember getting that sheet where they tell you how much you're going to make the next 12 years. It's like F1, F2, whatever. I think I was a G status or something. And long story short, my mom, I knew I wasn't going to make enough money. My mom said, go to a psychic And she told me when I went to the psychiatrist, I wasn't doing something with my voice. And I was like, yeah, right, whatever. I was really shy. And I had lost my voice going to see her. So I figured she was making it up. And when I got back to the office, everybody said, well, you love music. Why don't you do something to me? I was like, what? And then one of my friends said, well, I have a cousin with a studio. He's looking for background singers. He said, I'll go if you go. I was like, I'll go, And I went, I did the background stuff, you kind of like that light bulb moment, like this is where I want to be, this is it. And I made like $600 and it was like $1 million to me back then.
Yeah.
So that really would peak. That's when I decided I was going to be in the music business, and I knew I could write. So I always used to write poetry, and that's where it started. I started writing. I put an ad in the city paper. If you remember that.
Of course, yeah.
Met a keyboardist out of Andrews Air Force Base, and we just started writing songs together. So that's where I started. I was actually doing more of a Sade thing, singing more like I wanted to be the next Sade. If you see the first video, I have the ponytail, the red lips.
I think a lot of people wanted to be Sade back then.
Yeah. Still want to be Sade.
Oh yeah.
So that's really where it all started.
I mean, it's really incredible, a lot of things in that story, but I'm curious, did you have any, I know there's music in your family history, but for you, like, did you have experience singing before then? Like, where does that confidence come from to just really just jump into it at that stage?
Yeah, I ask myself sometimes. No, I think because I used to go on tour with my father every summer. He used to play, back then it was the Holiday Inn Lounge circuit, that kind of stuff. And my uncle was in MSFB. He was a saxophonist. And I used to always, I would go to a lot of backstage stuff. I just think that must have had something to do with it because I even remember the first time on stage. I had never been on stage, but I never had any stage fright. It was like, I don't know where it comes from, but it must be a family trait is all I can say. It was passed down.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible to really have like your first like real singing experience while you're, sort of in a professional setting already. That's wild. I think that's a pretty rare story.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. All you aspiring artists, go do those live shows, get warmed up, learn how it works, and prepare. But I think I was lucky to have been traveling with my father and had a family that was so into the music, industry and the scene, and I think that really helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure even just having someone else in the family doing a career like that, I think shows a kid that it normalizes it, I think, where it's just, that's what my dad does. So there's a normal thing that people do. And why can't I do it? Which is really nice because definitely not everybody has that. But yeah, man, I'm just trying to imagine you at that time in that studio for the first time or on stage for the first time. The learning curve must have been steep back then.
It was steep. I mean, I went down and I don't think I've ever sang out loud in front of anybody before that, shower singing.
Right.
And when I got the job background singing, that gave me a little and the producer really helped me. He was like, sing from your heart, don't think about it. And all those kind of little helpful things in the studio, I think really, built up my confidence.
And how quickly did you start thinking about moving out from the background and doing the artist thing yourself?
Oh, as soon as that project was done, maybe 2 weeks. And then I tried to, hang around the studio and get some more work, but I realized that I wasn't getting any more work. And that's when it clicked. And that's when I said, well, I can just write these songs for myself. I said, I know how to write. And that's when I said, I put the ad in the paper and I got the keyboards. And I was like, well, we formed a group called Modern Art. It was just me and him. And he the first couple of tracks he sent me, I wrote 2 right away. I rented my first 4-track, which was such a special time. And started, writing melodies and lyrics. and we got a demo together. My father paid for it. Went to Philly. That's where my family's from. And that's when we got the demo together and we started shopping the demo. And back then, there was a conference here in Washington, D.C., and I cannot remember the name of it. And we snuck in the back door, didn't have money to get in, and was at the end of a panel or something. We got in, and that's when I met the Basin Boys. I saw them over there with these leather jackets on, and we gave them the cassette. And that night they called me right away and said, they loved what I did, the way I wrote, and asked me if I wanted to be a part of the team.
And for people who don't know, the Basement Boys were involved in a lot of your early music and the early hits that people might know. And were they, I don't know a ton about them. Were they just kind of local DJs, local performers at the time, producers?
They were DJs, producers. They had a lot of work out before me. They had Alternate Taste's first album was actually with the Basement Boys, and they were signed to Warner Brothers, I think. They had a couple signed to a couple majors. They also go by a couple other names. I'm trying to think of the other names they go by, but they had a lot of success in the dance music genre, in the house music. And so they really, by the time I met them, they knew what they were doing, and they were already kind of established in the dance music scene, especially in New York with all the top guys.
Yeah. I mean, at that time, did it still feel like a new scene, like the dance scene in general?
For me, it felt really new. I remember when they sent me the first batch of tracks to write to, and I was like, why doesn't the beat change? Why is it?
It's so funny.
Why is it so repetitive? So it was really, really new. And, and I don't think, when I finally, they took me to New York and put me in the clubs. I was in Sound Factory and I got into the scene. That's when it really clicked. And I was like, oh, yeah, I like this. This is where I want to be. So that's kind of when it also, I guess, didn't want to be Sade anymore.
Right. There can only be one Sade. Was this, what do you think, like late 80s, early 90s, something like that?
This is late 80s. I think I started with them like 87. I think I wrote Gypsy around 87, 88-ish.
Okay. And
I remember it sat for like 2 years or something like that before it actually got signed.
Wow, that's so. What was the path for that? And I know I'm asking questions that probably you've talked about a lot too. So if I ever ask you something you're sick of talking about or it's not interesting, that's totally fine too.
Okay.
But I'm curious, like a hit that sits there for a couple of years, then I assume someone picks it up. Do you think, is that just like a right time, right place kind of thing? I'm always interested in like, what's the science of a hit? Because it's so hard to do.
Yes, it's kind of, I wrote that. I wrote like 3 songs, Gypsy, Make It Happy. And it got signed. I mean, I'm trying to remember correctly. It got signed to A&M Records in the UK, like quickly. And then it sat there for a couple of years. And then I believe what happened was Tony Humphries in New York started playing it in the club, like on a reel-to-reel. We're talking really basics.
Yeah.
And my A&R at Mercury Records heard it because it was starting to blow up. He was playing it on the radio. And that's when 2 years later, Mercury was a partner with A&M. And that's when Bruce Carbone brought it to New York. And that's when I really got signed to Mercury Records. So that's what I mean. It's that it did sit for a couple of years before it actually got properly released.
Did you know at the time? I mean, obviously, these are some of the first dance songs you ever wrote. Did it feel like anything special at the time?
At the time, no. I thought, it would do good in D.C. and Baltimore, maybe New York. And I was very, very happy. Yeah. Trust me, I was a very happy girl. I mean, come on, I just wrote these songs. I got signed. People were playing it, in the clubs. So I was very happy. I had no idea that I would spend the rest of my life because of these songs, touring and, doing what I'm doing now. I had no clue of the success that was coming my way.
I mean, it sounds like, at least what I'm picking up from the story you're telling me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the inspiration to do it was pretty quick, and you kind of just, you had this experience, you saw the psychic and that, but like, it's so fascinating to me. Sometimes I think the best music is kind of written without too much forethought, and it kind of sounds like this whole situation of you even getting into music happened, sort of quickly, sort of on an impulse, including these first few songs. And I don't know, I feel like there must be something to that of just like kind of a pure impulse.
I mean, you're going on my memory now, 30 years ago, but I did get turned down a lot.
Sure.
I did get turned down a lot. Don't get me wrong.
Everybody does, for sure.
Yeah, we went to many a meeting and it didn't work out. But I think I just remember at the time I was determined because, I wanted, I had 2 kids by that time, and I wanted them to have some bicycles.
Yeah. So that's pressure. You got to make it work then. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was, a lot. And, I had started doing a lot of spiritual work too, about kind of what they call law of attraction now, but it was a lot of stuff, visualizing and knowing writing it down. So a lot of that was playing into that. But sometimes I do look back, I'm sure I was afraid, but that whole thing of, like you said, just going in and singing and doing it, I don't know, that had to come from somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So. I mean, have you figured, this is another question I love to think about that doesn't really have a one answer, but like, do you have an idea of where it comes from now? Because you're still so prolific. You've been writing songs for forever at a high level. Like, do you have any sense of like what is creativity? Where does this all come from? I've heard it said in different ways. It comes through you. I heard Quincy Jones say it comes from the ethers. I've heard Pharrell say, the universe is a library. You get the opportunity to go pick something out. But it's something, because I've tried to stop. It's something, people call it a calling. Something kept calling, because I have a studio in my house, and every time I walk by it, it was like, you're not done yet. But it is a creativity that flows through you. I would call it God source energy, something like that. And, because some days you can feel when you're tapped into it, and you can feel when you're not. And when I'm not, I don't even try to force myself. Like I'm sitting in my studio now, I don't even force myself. But when I feel it, or I'm just really relaxed, that's when I do it. Because, when I was doing it back then, there was no pressure, maybe, to make money. But after you get into the business and you got people in your head and, we need another hit and what's she doing now? That kind of clogs all that creativity up, and it kind of slows it down. And that's why you see people who have the first album have this is a great big hit. Then you don't hear anything from them because they don't have that time or that space that they had to work on that first one like they did before. So it can really take a lot of people down. And it took me a minute to get myself together a couple times, but it definitely is something that flows through you and to you. It's not of myself. It's from outside of myself. Yeah, I think that's right, and I think that's a pretty good way to think about it. It's interesting you talk about, once people have some success or get into the business, it can, just change everything, change the way you think about what you're doing, all of that. Did you have that moment after the success of Gypsy Woman? Like once that really blew up and all of a sudden, I mean, you're famous on another level, you're performing, you're touring, all of that. Was it hard to like keep, writing songs in the same way to sort of keep on track, whatever track you had thought you were on at the start?
Yeah, it was hard because now you got to renegotiate a contract. You got lawyers fighting. You got people, she's a one-hit wonder. She'll never do that again. We need another hit from you. We need another hit from you. And you're questioning yourself constantly. It's like that natural feeling was really kind of gone. But I was determined. I was determined them not to call me a one-hit wonder. And
Yeah.
and when we brought in other people to help us out, but it's still a process, because even now I have a team, and I have to explain to them. You're using two different sides of your brain. They want me to do the interviews. They want me to do this, do all this business calls all day long. And then I'm scheduled out the whole week. They're like, well, did you write a song? I'm like, well, when did you think I was going to write? It's very hard to switch back to that creative side. So it's hard to explain to people. And I see, even like in the music business, like I've been on Grammy boards, and they're all attorneys, they're all business people, and they just don't think like artists do. So it's really hard to explain from an artist's perspective how we think to people who only think business minded. So it's always that battle with me, back and forth with the business side of things.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, that's an eternal thing too, is, we're all grateful to make a living off of this, but the nuts and bolts of that isn't necessarily something that agrees with like the general artist temperament,
Yeah. 9 a.m. meetings. I'm like, I don't talk before 11 a.m. Don't even think about it.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, what was, at the start and kind of as we're moving forward, like, what did success look like to you back then? You were saying you were excited if a song got played like just regionally, that was a big success at the start. Like, what was success? What did you want out of it? And how has that idea changed over time?
Ooh, that's a big question. I think at the time, I wanted the money. I think like a lot of young people, you think limousines and parties and, and designer clothes. I wanted money for my family, and I wanted a house. And I'll be honest, I didn't really spend much money other than the house and my kids' education. And I think now, the legacy is really nice. I think now, especially because I do a lot of shows, the important thing to me is that when I leave that room, everybody's happy. When I go on stage, I go there to entertain and make sure everybody, when I leave that stage, is happy. And when I write the music now, it's because I want to bring something that's, long lasting, and it brings joy to as many people as possible. It's not so much ego driven, I think, as it was before when I was younger.
That makes total sense. Yeah. I mean, I talk about this a lot on the podcast, but for me, I think my favorite part of the whole thing is performing. It's, the live show, being on stage and like feeling that, that connection with the crowd, that you're sort of creating something in between the two of you that, one couldn't provide on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're very lucky to get to do that, so I want to be the best at it.
Yeah, that's another part of it too, right? Is like you can always be a little bit better. There's always those little ephemeral moments that you do it long enough and you can kind of figure out how to like steer towards those in a live show.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice way to think about it too. Why was I even asking you about that? I was really going somewhere with that, but I may have lost it. Well, yeah, I guess the question is like, now for you, what keeps you here? Like, what's the most fun or the most exciting part of what you do now that you look forward to the most?
I think first, I love music. I just really love music. And like I do the podcast and I get all these new tracks in, and it's just, I really enjoy it. I really love hearing the music, the creativity. It's like, and to see where the music's going and, and see where it's not going.
Right. and that's, for anybody who doesn't know, we should mention that's the I Am House podcast that you do.
Yeah.
Which that's on SiriusXM as well as like podcast platforms.
Yeah, it's on SiriusXM Utopia, Saturday night, 7 p.m., Thursdays and Sundays at 8. And it's on Apple Podcasts, You can find me almost anywhere, iHeart, whatever you listen to your podcast, YouTube. But yeah, I play all new house music. I try to focus on vocal house, and I just really enjoy the music. I really enjoy, like, I'm working on an album, creating the songs, meeting these new guys who are just as passionate and really talented. It's very hard to find, but I love the music and I love performing. I love to travel, so it's I really just love what I do. I love meeting new people. I love putting smiles on people's faces, so that's what keeps me going.
I mean, that's beautiful. It's so cool you've been able to keep that love of the game, I guess, for so long. Like I've seen so many people along the way just lose that for one reason or another. And maybe they still keep the career going because it's going well, but you can tell like the love of the game, I guess, for lack of a better word, really gets lost for a lot of people. It's cool you've been able to keep it.
It's the business side that will take you down really quickly.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
And I think for some people too, I'm like you. I love traveling. I love playing shows. I think for some people, the touring aspect kind of wears them down as well.
It's not for everybody. It's definitely not for everybody.
Yeah.
Because I have to, my agents never go with me. So every time that they do go, they're like, how do you do this? I'm like, yeah, it's just not for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, it's so cool that you're able to do this, like, and still tour so much. I feel like there's a lot of examples in dance music, probably in all music, but I know more about dance music, where I think a lot of the originators, a lot of the, original influencers from like back in the day, the people who really set the blueprint for what was to come. And I put you in that category. I think a lot of those people end up not getting the shine they deserve. I think a lot of them get overlooked over time or aren't able to sort of evolve and change along with the times. And it's just awesome that you're still here doing it. I think I'm very grateful you are. And man, it's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's ebbs and flows. But one of the things with my show is I have dancers actually do a full performance. And I think there's so many, people go see DJs so much. So now when I do come out, I'm almost like a novelty, like, oh, wow, somebody said, because you don't get to see too many people actually perform a dance song. You might see a singer standing in a DJ booth singing, and which I refuse to do. I'm like, nope, they still try to get, I'm like, oh, we only want her to sing one. Nope. So it's a lot of that going on where I have to have the show. And it's kind of coming back around, like the DJs will want me to come because I have the show, so it's, I had to fight through that stage, but because the DJs basically took over all the dance shows and stuff. People just want to see that now. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to hear your perspective on that, because I've had, a bunch of singers and DJs as well and producers as well, but I'd say people who are sort of primarily known for their singing on the pod, and hearing them talk about the struggles to sort of get recognized on the same level that, just the DJs are getting recognized on, whether that's, fair credit on a song or equal billing on a show, all that kind of stuff. I think younger artists are having real problems with that.
Yeah, they are. It is a big problem. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the podcast, because I wanted to name the singers who probably wrote the song and give everybody their names. But yeah, it's a big problem. And I think, I try to tell, these people how important it is, to put your name on these songs and the order of the song, whether it's and or featuring, because it's a different check from a monetary check, and it's a different position on Spotify. And it's really important. And some of these, I don't know why some of the DJs just don't want to give the credit to where it's due. I don't know why, but I think if the artist would fight a little bit harder, it can be done. I mean, a lot of these DJs are nice guys. It's just what everybody else does. So they're like, oh, we're going to do it too. But it's very important to get your name on there and the position of your name. And, I don't know what's going to happen to the vocalists, say after my generation, because it's very hard for them to get booked. I know an artist, I don't know if you're familiar with Vassy, who had billions of sales with David Guetta.
Yeah, I know Vassy, yeah.
Can't get booked. Every now and then she'll get a show. I'm like, this woman sold all these records. And so I don't know what that is. I think people are trying to figure it out, but everything's so geared towards DJs now that
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. It's a huge problem. And my take on it, I guess, is I think a lot of it is, I don't know that it's coming from the artists or the DJs themselves. I think it's more the managers. I think it's the business side, people who are trying to protect these, what are now, multi-million-dollar brands of these artists and all that. And to me, it's like the money kind of got everything confused because it's just such a crazy amount of money in dance music now that I think it's like the money is almost in charge more than the artists, Yeah,
it is. It's so amazing. I was like, I should have been a DJ because if I had known how much these DJs are making now.
But how could you have? I mean, I talked to people from all different eras, and I mean, the idea you could be a famous DJ is pretty new, and the idea that you could be a rich famous DJ is even newer than that.
Yeah, who would have thought? The person that's playing the music is the star. But I guess the ones that are really famous actually are producers. I would think
these days for sure. Yeah,
if you're a DJ, you really want to start producing. But that's a whole nother conversation whether a person should consider himself a DJ or a producer. Because there are a lot of DJs saying that they're producers.
Right.
And they're not. Because you use a splice sample does not make you a producer. So it's a couple categories there.
Absolutely. Well, when did you start learning production as well? Because, I mean, you have production credits on a lot of records as well.
Well, I mean, being in the studio so long, and a lot of times I get these tracks from DJs and I do the arrangements. Like they'll just, 8 minutes of track. Right. And it'll go 8 different directions. And I'll edit it down and do an arrangement, put it in a proper song format. And the people that I really like to work with, we'll go back and forth on, what should be here, what should be there. So that's kind of where I come in. And I think the songs that have back and forth do a lot better than the people that I just ship the vocals off to. I've tried to stop that a little bit. Now I only send my vocals out produced. So if you get a vocal from me, it's totally produced.
Right.
You're lucky if you get a stem. I might just give you a cappella. But
But again, I think that's smart too. And that's, I think, another good note for younger artists and younger vocalists is, having control at every step of the process, making sure that you're presented the way you want to be presented. I think that's smart.
A lot of these DJ producers don't know how to produce. They don't know how to work with vocals. They're so used to sampling and they've never taken the time, to produce a vocal and what it should sound like, or even use a proper engineer, which I feel is very important for any song. You should have a proper engineer, not just, you and your laptop,
Yeah, absolutely. Did you say you were working on a new album earlier?
I sure did.
I mean, that's exciting. It's been a while since you put out like an album, right?
It's been decades, I believe. I don't even want to think of it long ago. But I wanted to do one more album because it became a singles market. And the time and the money it takes to put an album together, I was like, it's not worth it to be gone in 30 days. You know what I mean? Just everything's so fast. But now there's new strategies, there's new things in place. But I got an album. My first release should be by the end of March during Miami Music Week, all those festivities.
Oh, that's great. So the album's pretty much done then? It's close to done?
I got 8 tracks done. I'm looking for 3 more.
That's great.
I want 3 more bangers. I got a lot of a lot of album tracks that were played in underground clubs, but I want some more crossover ones. So
sure. What's the vibe for you musically these days? Either, tracks on the album or just kind of what's catching your ear now? Because I think it's crazy. House music in the last, 5-10 years has had such an explosion that, I don't know. I could see you going any number of ways with like a lot
Yeah.
of what's popping right now.
Yeah, it took me a minute to find which way I wanted to go. But what I'm feeling, when I'm listening back to what I've created, it's really a mixture of some of the, I want to say the old school sound, some of the original sounds of house combined with the new stuff. Like all the new, it's all high energy. It's all, I would probably say it's more progressive, but it has the old school sounds, but it's combined with what's happening now. It has a new edge on it. So it feels authentic. It feels like it could be in the club or on the radio. And, I'm really big on dancers and dances and club scenes, maybe the voguing and the ballroom stuff. So I really wanted to make sure I had stuff for them to dance to and with. Because there's still a lot of house music clubs dancing, and there's even house music dance competitions.
Yeah.
Which are massive, like, in Japan, you know how that works. So I really wanted to make sure that they had something that they could work with. And I wanted to have something, a little bit crossover too.
That sounds great. And I think it's a great time for something with that aesthetic, because I'm sure you know as well as I do, there's so much house music now where you can tell they're going back and listening to a lot of 90s stuff.
Yeah.
And, copying that style.
With Beyonce, with that one, that's like,
yeah.
Oh, man, she almost did it better than the original. Yeah. Like, all right, let's do something here. But yeah, it's been being recognized. It took a little while because, when I started, dance music was a fad. It wasn't real music, and nobody really liked it, wanted to touch it. And now it's kind of like it's the coolest thing happening. I get a lot of requests for licenses. I don't want to say the name, but someone really young and popular with 100 million followers just asked to use one of my songs in their ad. And I'm like, really? So it's like, it's the cool thing now. And and I also realize it's cool because it's still kind of underground. You know what I mean? It's still not, at least not here in America, totally mainstream. So that's what I would kind of, when I'm working on the songs, I want, sometimes the mixes, like I have one song I like, it's a little too poppy. I need to put that edge back on it. So it's a lot of thinking going on, a lot of feeling.
I love that. Yeah, it's a fine line between underground and mainstream these days, I think. And I'd be curious to know, like, your experience of, the EDM explosion too, when that first really became a thing, because there's a whole generation of people out there for them, like, that is dance music,
Yeah, they thought they created it. Yeah. I think that, I remember it was a little testy time because you got to remember it was dance music, and all of a sudden they came in and changed their name, and we were like, what? How do you just take a whole genre and then rename it and claim that you created it? So it was a little testy there for some of us for a little while. I didn't really get into EDM mainly because I like bass lines. I like music that has a bottom and a bass line. And EDM didn't really have much of a bass line. If they had a bass line, it was just a drum thing moving around. And I could never really get into writing any of it. Not to put the genre down. It made a lot of people happy, a lot of people money.
There's some great songs, all of that. But it's nice. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's nice to see that it's coming back around to a little bit more, the bass lines and, a little more structure and stuff.
Yeah, when it first came out, my experience was like, there was the Dutch house thing. And you're right, it really was all about the kick drum. To me, my main issue with, I guess EDM means something different to everybody, but I guess I'm talking about the early, like, Dutch house style of EDM, the European festival style stuff. Like, it just didn't seem like, some of it was cool because it was new and I never heard anything like it. But then a lot of it sort of just felt like it was trying to do dance music without really doing the homework of it, without understanding, like, why people did things a certain way and what it was used for and where it came from. That was kind of my issue with it. But I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point. I mean, it's just funny for me to like think about where everything ends up fitting in, because I'm sure you do, you know, festivals and shows with people from different scenes, different corners of the music world. And in some ways, I think it's cool that it can all kind of be presented on the same stage. And then in other days, I'm sort of frustrated where it's like, well, this thing has a lot more significance than this other thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you never know, because give it 30 years, they DM. I mean, look at disco. Disco was hated and back in the 70s, and now it's like you cannot not hear it. So give it a little time, but I think the EDM explosion was a lot of people just because they had a laptop and access to samples and things. They were just creating music. It was the rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall. And, that's where I think it got the difference between a DJ and a producer. It was you could see the difference. So,
yeah.
And I think that's probably why there was only so many people that became really famous,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the rise and fall, going faster and faster, the quicker cycles of music, it's still happening. I mean, it's like lightning fast at this point. TikTok being a big part of that too. I don't know. I don't think they're going to ban TikTok.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think Dua Lipa is a dance artist?
That's arguable. No, I would say no. I don't think so, really, at the root of it. But I do think she makes great dance music. So I don't know. Maybe I'm splitting hairs there. Maybe I'm trying to have it both ways. To me, she's a pop artist who's made a lot of great dance music, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, I just never know. I like it. Is she a dance artist or not? I mean, I think that would be, if she was, she would be the biggest.
Yeah,
out there now.
Absolutely, right? And I mean, I love her music. I think she's great. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with all of that. I mean, one difference I see, and I was thinking about this when I was listening to some of your music earlier today too, is, even since the start, you've been like socially conscious in your music. Like Gypsy Woman, the story behind that song, for anyone who doesn't know, is about a real person who you would see out on the streets out in DC, right?
Yeah, on Connecticut Avenue.
Yeah. And so like the song is based on a real person. It's about her experience, and it's social commentary, which I don't think everybody picks up necessarily the first time they hear that song. And social commentary in general, I feel like, is missing pretty strongly in dance music right now. Like any kind of socially conscious lyrics. To me, I think a lot of artists are scared to engage with anything resembling socially conscious stuff in their music. And I don't know, that strikes me as a big difference between then and now as well.
Yeah. Well, I will say dance music compared to a lot of other genres, at least it's still positive.
That's true.
A lot of the lyrics are very positive and uplifting. I will say that. I think... even I've written other socially, like just say back in the 90s, I've had other socially aware songs, but the label were like, nobody wants to hear that. So it was a lot of fight back. And I just wrote a song a couple of years ago with Hi-Fi Sean, Heavy. And I got a lot of feedback. Oh, it's too serious. So, it's kind of, I don't know what to say. I guess if you're ready for it or not, maybe it's the sign of the times whenever. I think now is a good time for a socially conscious song.
Yeah, I think that's
this
right.
year, I'm naming my tour this year "Staying Alive" in 2025. So
hey, there you go. That's the best a lot of us can hope for. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think if you listen to dance music, I mean. A lot of it is that there's not a lot of songwriters out of it. Like I said, I get these songs. A lot of these songs are spliced together from Splice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this one song, I was like, well, that doesn't even make any sense. It's like it's two different songs they took from. But, if the song still feels good, getting the songwriters in there and actually letting them write I think it goes back to not giving them credit and things like that, and actually feeling that they are important. I really feel like some of the Europeans feel like songwriters are just, there's something extra to have. Whereas like in America, like the songwriters are the most important part of the song. So I think that might be some of the difference.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Did you, this just occurred to me, when you were first really starting to perform and tour all over the world, did seeing other parts of the world, going to Europe or going to somewhere else, that kind of new perspective, did it change the way you thought about how you approached music?
How I approach music.
Or like, did it change really anything about the way, you were operating your own career, your own creativity?
I guess it did affect me. I mean, didn't even know half of these places existed. You get on a plane, like, where am I going? You pull out that little map in the bag. It opened my eyes up to the world and what they thought, especially of Americans. It was really an eye opener. But as far as music, I don't think it really changed because, at the time, I was just so into what I was doing. But I think maybe later, I started working with, a lot of Europeans, like after the 90s. And it changed. The whole thing changed. You got to remember, we're going from reel to reel to a laptop.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a lot to adjust to. You start out going into these big, massive studios to just going into somebody's basement. It's a big change. So, you have to adjust, to all that kind of stuff. But I think for me, the music still, I'm still me on each song. I just still try to be me.
Yeah, it's, I think, really tough to, like have your world open up like that and kind of stay level-headed, but then also evolve with the technology and with the industry and all that. And still, I don't know, it seems like you've been able to really like keep your head on your shoulders throughout all of this, which I think is worth pointing out. It's hard. Not everybody can do that.
No, it's a lot of change. Like, some music I was like, I'm not doing that. I can't remember. I can't remember. It was just before EDM. It was like that Euro dance.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That was like, I couldn't do it. And like the EDM, I couldn't do it. I think when I just decided, I'm going to do what I love, what I do best. I mean, don't get me wrong. I tried to write to some of those songs. I tried to do some of that stuff, but it just didn't feel authentic. It just didn't feel like it was me. And, even if, you have to think, what if it's the success? I do this song that I hate. What if I got to sing that the rest of my life? Yeah. So, no, it's been challenging. It's a lot. Like I said, it was a couple of times I just wanted to stop. I was like, it's just not, maybe I should go sell real estate,
Right.
But, I think that the times have changed so much because, I always wanted to do the radio show. And I actually did one before, but this was before the internet was so, prolific, I guess. And now you can do almost anything that you want. So I think it was just a matter of me waiting the time and having the right timing,
Hey, there you go. I mean, there's a couple great nuggets in there. Yeah, waiting for your time. Timing is really important, and being patient is really important.
Being patient,
and also what you were saying about knowing when maybe the big trend wasn't for you. I think that's so important too. I think some people are afraid to really like stand on their taste and like stand on their identity as artists of saying, this just isn't for me. It's cool, but it's not for me. I think some people are scared to do that. I think doing that and saying just, I'll skip this one. It's important,
Yeah. It is. I haven't thought about it, you put it out there. I guess that, was a good decision.
Absolutely. Yeah. If it doesn't feel right, usually there's a reason for that, I think. Do you still do your label as well? The I Am House label?
Yeah, I have the label. The album's going to come out through my label I just did a new distribution deal. I was doing other artists because I know there's a lot of talent out there. And I did it and I was like, why am I spending all this money? Maybe I should do my own music. And that's when I said, you know what? It's time I think that's when I decided it's time to do the album. I'm going to take all my resources and put it behind myself. I mean, not to say if I don't hear something good and I'll put it out, but it was a learning curve. I realized that all these promoters, the record labels are using the same ones. They're getting rid of all the departments. And it's like, especially in the dance community, it's all the people I know from the 90s. They've all gone off and started their own businesses. So I know a lot of these people. So that's kind of what, why I wanted to start it. And it got me back into talking to everybody and reconnected with everybody again. So that's where I think right now would be the best for me to put my music out on my label.
Yeah. I mean, running a label is hard. That's a whole nother job.
I have a label manager. Don't even think I'm doing it. I have Joe B. He used to run King Street, a couple other major dance labels, and he knows what he's doing. So
for sure.
It's working out pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, is there anything else we haven't talked about? Anything else that's on your mind? Anything else we should get out there before we wrap it up? The new album's coming, new singles in March. I got the podcast. I'm working on an I Am House event. I don't want to say too much, but it's something in New York for a nice event for people to come out and enjoy. And I'm working on a couple other things for the community. But I got plans this year. I got a new tour coming. 25 Staying Alive. This is what we make it through this year. If we make it through this year, I will be out on tour this summer. Yeah, we'll see what happens. In the next couple days, I think we'll see what happens. Yeah.
I'll see you next year, but
that's great. Well,
I'm excited about the Ultra Fest and doing all that stuff down there in Miami. So I'll be down there if anyone's coming out.
Oh, that's great. You're doing Ultra this year? That should be fun.
Well, it's Miami Music
Week.
Music Conference Ultra, whatever they want to call it.
Yeah. There's a lot of shows down there around that time. It's really nice to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I usually end by just asking this kind of like a random access memory kind of question. Just looking for like a time from your life, a memory from your life, could be from any time, 5 minutes ago when you were a kid, anytime. When in that memory, in that moment, maybe it's something you just think about every once in a while. Maybe it just pops into your head every now and then. A memory where music really hit you hard, really like was memorable, left an imprint on you. Anything. It could be a show you saw. It could be a song on the radio. It could be something your dad was playing.
Oh. I have a lot of those. It's a
kind of just the first one that pops into your head.
I'm going to go with seeing the Jackson 5, seeing Michael Jackson.
Oh, wow.
And, it was very magical then, but now to see how his thought processes now that, you can see some of his thought process about how, the Thriller documentary and all that stuff. I just remember sitting in my bedroom with my headphones. I mean, no one would know I was in the house, and the music just, it just hits you. And it still does it to me. Like the other day, I was listening to songs for the podcast, and there's one song, I've played that song 10 times. And sometimes it's just how we can just take you to a whole nother vibration.
Yeah.
That just really, I just realized how much I love music and how, I don't know how empty life would be without music. You know what I mean?
Man, yeah, I do know what you mean. Absolutely. The Jackson 5, did you see them live or just like hearing the music?
Oh yeah. I saw them live, and that whole show, just seeing something live. I guess my first live show. I think that kind of stuck with me.
Oh, that was your first live show?
Yeah,
wow.
So, the performing, the lights, and I think I still think about that when I go on stage. I want to give a good show, you know what I mean? And I think that's what, Michael Jackson was about in retrospect. That sticks with me.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great image. And I mean, I think it touches on a lot of what we were just talking about. If you want to talk about, hey, who's given a better show than Michael Jackson? Nobody. But also, he was just that person. We were talking about creativity and being connected to whatever's out there I mean, it seemed like he was just a master of finding that connection and really exploring it and
knowing your craft. And I still talk about this with my dancers and, rehearsing and focusing and visualizing and what's your purpose on the stage and things like that is very important. And it's a lot that goes into it than just getting up there and standing there. And a lot of it you learn over the years, but it's something you should be focused on if you're a performer, which I hope there's some out there listening.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. And maybe a few new ones after this.
Oh, good.
Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It was really nice talking with you. I had a great time.
Oh, you too. Maybe I'll run into you.
I hope so. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out now that I know you're in the area. Maybe I'll see you at the grocery store.
Yeah, when it warms up.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm not leaving my house anytime soon.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was a real treat.
All right. Thank you, Willie.
All right. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.